Got it. Hello there, I'm Bruce Wingus, President of the Photo Society. Welcome to tonight's program, which promises to be fun and interesting. I have more than just a few things to share before we get started. I wanted to remind everyone that our annual photo contest deadline is near. The deadline is midnight Sunday, October 30th. Contest is open to all Photo Society members, and awards will be presented on Tuesday, November 15th. Go to our website, cvps.org, for more details about the contest. On Tuesday, October 25th, a longtime Photo Society member and well-known photographer Jim Retzel will be with the Summit County Metro Parks and the Cuyahoga Valley our Photo Society at the F.A. Saberly Nature Realm Visitor Center, where he's going to talk about his exhibit, Wings and Voices Over the Cuyahoga. It's currently on display there, and this will be an in-person event. That's Tuesday, October 7th at 7 p.m. if you want to join us there. The photo walk in the Cascade Valley is ongoing through October 31. The park's located at 1212 Cuyahoga Street in Akron. If you haven't been there before, there's lots of fall color down there right now, and scenes along the Cuyahoga River. We'll have a Zoom critique on November 2nd at 7 p.m. You can email cvpsphotowalk@gmail.com for more information on that. And the next photo walk is scheduled for November 12 through 28. Details on that to come. For those of us who are on Facebook or Instagram, you can take full advantage of the social media by tagging your photos with the Conservancy or the National Park. For the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, Facebook, they are at Cuyahoga Valley National Park. On Instagram, they are at Cuyahoga Valley NPS. That's all one word. For the Conservancy for Cuyahoga Valley National Park is on Facebook, and their Instagram is at 4CVNP. You can also use the hashtags 4CVNP or hashtag CVNP on Facebook and Instagram to get more people to see your work. If you didn't catch all that, there'll be a test on that in 10 minutes. Beyond that, we've got a newsletter coming out that has all that information in there, so we'll get that out to you. Let's see, we're resuming our in-person Photo Society holiday party. It's been on hiatus for a while because of COVID. The 2022 holiday party will be Wednesday, December 14th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Hines Hill Conference Center. More details on that will be coming forth in newsletters, and we'll show you how to make reservations for that and so forth. That's enough of me. Let's go ahead and turn this over to Steve, and let's get our program started.
Thank you, Bruce. Appreciate that. We'll want to welcome everybody here on behalf of the programming committee for the Cuyahoga Valley Photo Society. We are time for our annual Petchakucha. And so let me see if I can't share my screen here and get that started. So hopefully you see a slide that says Petchakucha 22. Is that correct? Somebody give me a thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. Very good. So this is an annual event. For those who are new to our Photo Society, we are a part of the Conservancy for the National Park. So the funds go to support that organization. And we have a broad range of members. We have members who are just trying to figure out how to use the M on their camera and how to do manual settings. And we've got members who have published multiple books of their photography. So it's a broad range. Everybody's welcome. Everybody starts somewhere, and we love to learn from each other and help each other out. And that's one of the points of the Petchakucha. So this evening, we have a full slate. We have 8 presenters that we're going to hear from. Each of them has a slightly different theme, and each of them has 20 slides and 20 seconds per slide. Occasionally, they'll use more than one image that they'll put on a slide for that 20 seconds. But hopefully you find some things interesting. I find it always great to see other people's work. I find some inspiration in kind of seeing through their eyes. So we're going to start off first with Chris Brown. And I'm going to have to remind each of our presenters, when it's your turn, please be sure to unmute yourself so the rest of us can hear you. And then when you give me the signal, we'll launch into the auto advance of 20 seconds each. So Chris, tell us a little about yourself and your presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Brown. I have loved taking pictures from when I was a kid to, being an old lady now. I started off with a point and shoot film camera, and then I graduated to a 35mm film camera and a little Coolpix digital camera to a DSLR, and finally to my new mirrorless camera, which I absolutely love. I love shooting wildlife, birds in flight, landscapes, but my favorite thing to shoot is dogs and dog sports. My theme tonight has something to do with water. There may be water in the picture, hidden in the picture, or have a connection to water. You'll just have to find it. So I'm ready when you are.
Okay.
So this is Luna, and this is true to my dog sports love. This is Luna catching a Frisbee on a snowstormy day. This is an image of a snow bunting. I've always loved snow buntings and had never had the opportunity to capture one. And I was out shooting when the red poles were in town. And there was this cute little snow bunting just at the side of the road picking at seeds. And I was just thrilled to just get a capture of him. This is Alfedler Falls in Novelty. It's one of my favorite waterfalls to visit. It's a stacked image, and I think I used the Brian Hansel Waterfalls filter for this. This is Cedar Falls in Hocking Hills, and I was so thrilled to go down to maybe capture some waterfalls. And when we got down there, there were so many people and you just couldn't get a clear shot. So I just packed up the camera after this shot and just enjoyed my day at the park. This is my very favorite waterfalls to shoot. This is Sulphur Springs in South Chagrin Reservation. And I just really love the shale and how the lines lead up to the water. And it's a fun waterfall to shoot at any time of the year. And okay, good. This is a Springfield bog on a nice dewy morning. This was taken with a lens baby velvet. It puts a nice sharp focus at where you would like the focus to be, and then creates a nice glow around the outer edge. And I love this lens when it works. I don't like it when it doesn't work. I think it worked this time. This is a new native in my garden. It's called Rose Pink. And it was one morning after the rain, and I just took my macro lens out and just took a shot of it. No stacking done there. This is another lens baby image. It was taken at Valley View during one of the first frosts, and I was really just trying to capture the frost with the lens. This is also another lens baby image, and it was taken at Trail Lake Park. And it was just really fun to see all the snow on the frost on the flowers. And this was a little red-winged blackbird down at Beaver Marsh. And I really didn't realize that his breath had been coming out during his song until I got it home and put it on the computer. And this is Umbrella Alley in Louisville. And if you haven't gone there, you got to go. It's just a fun place to see all the colorful umbrellas and it's just a fun place to be. This is the Lorraine Lighthouse one night during sunset. I grew up on Lake Erie and I really love the lake and I respect the lake. And this was one Gaily November at the Westerly Treatment Plant breakwall. And once again, another day with strong winds hitting the Cleveland West West Pier Light, the lighthouse at Cleveland, Windy Park area. These are tide pools at Seal Rock Beach in Oregon, and it was just amazing to see all the anemones and the starfish, and just a wonderful, wonderful place to be able to take photos. This is Thor's Well, also in Oregon. They think it used to be a sea cave, but the top fell in, and when the ocean comes in at high tide, the water just spews straight up and then just drains back in. This is Bath Nature Preserve at sunset. I had just gotten a new filter and I thought I'd go out and try and see what I could get. And it really, really helped make the sunset look really pretty. It's also a stacked image. This is Anderson Dock in Ephraim, Wisconsin in Door County. And there's graffiti on this building. And it started back in the late 1800s that the sailors in the boats would put the name of the boat and the date they were there. And today the tradition continues with people writing their names on the side of the building. And I'm going to leave you where I started with the dogs. And this is Betty, and she leaves the best spit trail when she catches her Frisbees.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Kind of amazing to see the different forms of water that you captured. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, because it's going to take about 1 hour to go through this, I'd like people to hold off questions or comments to the end. We will give a time for those when you have a follow-up question or issue, if you can try and remember them. And want to point out, obviously, our very first slide took more than 20 seconds. And that's just how technology goes sometimes, folks. I promise you, I rehearsed this several times to make sure all the timings were right. And I do also understand different folks' internet speeds, things go wrong. So everybody's not seeing everything the exact same time and don't know how to deal with that. It generally seems to work out. So next we're going to go up to Mr. Richard Malecki, and his presentation is Dusk Till Dawn. Just tell me when you're ready, Dick.
Okay, well, I'm Richard Malecki, and hopefully speaking of dogs, Chris, my two will behave themselves during these next 6-7 minutes. But I've been a Photo Society member for about 10 years now. I shoot a Nikon system. I do shoot locally, but also I do a lot of travel. The slides that you're going to see are a mix of locations. I'll talk about that, but the theme is the changing light from dusk, from the time the sun is going down until dawn. Steve, ready to go.
All right.
So we all know how difficult it is to shoot into the sun as a photographer. Sometimes you can get creative, you can get reflections. This is Kendall Lake, and you can get it through the trees and get a nice starburst effect with that. Oh, I think we lost part of the picture here. Well, anyway, this was at Spruce Knob. If you hit the sun right, sometimes right on the horizon, you can get a good shot with it. And Bruce, I think you'll recognize this from our trip down to the Dolly Sods and Bruce area. Clouds at sunset can really make a picture. And this is Hurricane Ridge on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. Starting early sunset, the clouds lit up. Another impact of clouds and ice and water. This is the Jokosarlen ice beach in southern Iceland. Also clouds, big impact. This is La Push on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington, actually part of an Indian reservation right on the coast there. And sometimes you want to hide the sun behind an object. This is the black sand beach at Vik, Iceland, southern Iceland. And you can really get a phenomenal color in the water at sunset. And sometimes, Chris mentioned Seal Rock. This is Seal Rock State Park. You can get the sun right at the edge of night with these stars just starting to appear. I almost walked away from this shot because I didn't think the sun was going to break through the clouds, but caught it just right. So sometimes patience pays off. Now there's plenty of light at night when we transition into night, sometimes too much. And this is Indigo Lake in the national park. You'll recognize that. And the light in the sky is light pollution. So it can be very difficult to shoot at night right in our area. And you really see the difference though in a dark sky area like Lake Pend Oreille in northern Idaho. And just incredible the number of stars that you can see when you don't have light pollution to deal with. Lighthouses can be a wonderful subject. This is Body Island Lighthouse on the Outer Banks. Composite shot. When I shot this, the foreground, the Milky Way wasn't up. I shot that later over the ocean and then blended the two. And the shot came out fairly well, but you can also get a single shot. This was a single shot of the same lighthouse, same evening, a slightly different angle and different lighting. But my favorite is the Northern Lights. This is the famous Skogafoss waterfall, southern Iceland, with some relatively faint northern lights and taken actually in a snowstorm. So that's why you see all the white in the foreground. Sometimes the northern lights can be extremely bright and very colorful. And this is on the northern side of Iceland, mountain hut in a high mountain pass with about 4 feet of snow. Or they can be otherworldly. And this was Fairbanks, Alaska, this past January, up in the hills above Fairbanks. Had a phenomenal display of northern lights. It was also about 30 below. So as dawn comes, of course, we've got the wonderful blue hour. And this is the Gap of Dunloe in Killarney National Park in Ireland, just on the very, very beginning point of dawn. As the sun breaks through, we begin to see some color. And this is Quail Hollow in our own national park. Dawn just beginning up over the horizon there. Jeanette's, again, color continues. Jeanette's Pier off Nags Head, North Carolina. Again, early dawn. And as the sun comes up, the clouds begin to interact again. And again, this is the Gap of Dunloe in Killarney Park in Ireland. And sometimes if you're shooting in the mountains at dawn, you can get alpenglow. And that's always a wonderful experience. And this is the Black Valley in Killarney National Park, Ireland. And sometimes the scene just explodes with light. And this is Mount Fitzroy in the Patagonia region of Argentina near El Chatén, Argentina.
Those are fabulous. Thank you, Richard. Really appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah, my goal in life is someplace to follow Dick around as he goes to these fabulous locations and try and capture images like he does. Those are fantastic.
Thanks, Steve.
And next we have Randy Herman up with Macro Fun. Randy?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name is Randy Herman. I have been doing photography, I would say, as a serious hobby for about, I guess, 3 or 4 years. And I love photographing birds and wildlife and really anything related to nature. And I really do love macro photography because there's just so much beauty in the details. Most of the pictures that I take are with a macro lens, but sometimes if I'm out and about, like not at home, I don't have my macro with me, so then I take pictures just with my zoom. Right, ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a yellow swallowtail. An interesting fact about butterflies is that their wings are actually transparent and they're covered in thousands of miniature scales. And the colors that we see are the reflections of light through those scales. Also, they use their feet to taste the flowers to see which ones are edible. This is a pearl crescent butterfly. And what I really love about this one is there's so much detail to see. You can see the pollen on the wings and, you know, the detail of the hairs and of those little tiny scales and even the stripes on the antenna. We all love our monarch butterflies. This is one I was actually chasing around the backyard when I saw it. An interesting fact about them is when they are migrating from Mexico up to Ohio, we end up with the 3rd generation of monarchs. And then when they lay their eggs, the 4th generation that hatches is the one that migrates south. This bumblebee has green eyes, and I'd never seen that before. And I had to look it up, and it's a Xylocopa virginica. Never heard of it before. Honeybees, bumblebees can sting as many times as they want, but males cannot sting. And of course, they're great pollinators, and the queen bees and worker bees gather the pollen, and they carry them back to the hive in those pollen baskets that are on their back legs. And this was a bumblebee that actually was sleeping on a hydrangea petal in the backyard. And I just thought that was really kind of cool. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is a daylily. We have a huge patch of them alongside our garage. And here you can see the pollen on the anthers that are on the ends of the stamens. And apparently they're very tasty, because when I went out a couple days later, the deer had eaten them all up. This is a coneflower bud, and I really do love the geometric pattern as the cone part is developing. And it's especially beautiful with morning dew on it. This is a sunflower that the birds planted for us under the bird feeder. And this was taken on day number 2 of the flower actually opening up. And this is a dogwood blossom on my very favorite tree that we planted about 10 years ago. And every spring you can see me out there just taking hundreds of pictures of these blossoms as they go through their budding and blooming process. This was a cosmos in the backyard that was a late bloomer. This was like the end of October, and it was just covered with frost in the morning. And I just really like how you could see the crystals, ice crystals along the edges of the petals and on the leaves. This dandelion seed head was actually a surprise for me when I took the picture, and when I uploaded it, I was kind of surprised, very surprised to see that it was so sparkly. And I guess just shows you can find beauty in the most unexpected places. These are brittle stems that were showed up underneath the bird feeder one morning. They made me late for work because, of course, I had to run outside and take pictures. And unfortunately, I didn't realize that there's that stalk of grass in the middle that I wish I had clipped off. These are more brittle stems on another day. This is the same group of them. The top ones were in the evening and the golden hour closed up. And then next morning, they were opened up again. This is a long-legged fly. It's very colorful and very tiny, like the size of a little fingernail. And they're actually predator flies, and they're good for your garden. And they eat on all kinds of small insects, including other flies, aphids, and mites. And then you have the spotted cucumber beetle, and they actually are garden pests, and they have been known to actually cause damage to crops because they can infect them with a virus that damages and kills fruit and vegetables. This is an orb weaver barn spider that was actually on my brother's front porch in Virginia a few weeks ago. We did spray the web. We had to kind of mist it. It was early morning. It should have had dew on it, but it didn't. But anyway, I just really love the detail and the fact that it has a little smiley face on its abdomen. And this jumping spider was actually in our kitchen while I was cooking breakfast. And so of course I had to stop what I was doing. I left stuff on the stove, but I ran, I got the macro and took a bunch of pictures of it. And then we did let him go outside. I did not burn down the kitchen though. This is the only reason I can tolerate winter is taking pictures of snowflakes. My setup, I keep in the freezer a mitten and a ceramic tile and a little glass jar with a glass lid and a black bottom, so I can take pictures of snowflakes. And you'll see that they're actually like 8 different types of snowflakes. They're all hexagons. You can see in the bottom picture, there's one, it's a plain that doesn't have any legs on it or arms on it. And then there's also one, it's kind of rare, but that had 12 arms on it. And nobody knows why, but they do say the different ones are just due to atmospheric conditions.
Very nice. Well done, Randy. Thank you very much. I've been really impressed with Randy, who's just a few years kind of into serious photography and the depth of information she's capturing and doing the research, doing the homework about the items she's also photographing. So well done. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Steve.
And next we've got Randy Dunn. So we're going Randy to Randy, and Randy's gonna have a presentation on Death Valley in monochrome. Randy?
I'm Randy Dunn. I've been photographing since 1975 when I first picked up a camera, and I shoot everything but people. I love nature, but I do other types of photography as well. And I was just out in Death Valley again this January, so let's get it going.
Okay, cool. Randy, you're a little bit weak. If you could get just a little bit closer to the mic, it might help. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thanks.
is that better?
Sounds good. Thank you.
So the majority of these pictures tonight are taken from a 2-week trip I did in January to Death Valley. I shot everything in color and converted it into black and white through different processes, just depending on which image I'm working with. Death Valley, for those of you that haven't been there, I encourage you to go. Don't go in the summer. Make sure it's the winter. It is the hottest and driest and lowest national park. It's also the largest national park in the lower 48. And with a 2-week time frame, I really finally had a chance to explore this park that I'd been to maybe half a dozen times before. And it really grew on me. I can see getting out there probably every 2 to 3 years for lengthy trips, anywhere for probably 2 to 4 weeks the next time I go. Unfortunately, back in August, they had record flooding and rainfall, and then they had another big fall in September. So the Park Service is extremely challenged right now trying to get access and roads opened up, and we'll see what nature has in store. So some popular places, this was 20 Mule Team Canyon, which is a little loop road that goes through some of the Badlands, a very scenic area. Typically it is passable with a normal car, but if you have 4-wheel drive, you'll probably feel a little more secure back in there. And here again, this is another area where it's just great to park off the side of the road. You just hike into these Badlands. This image was taken along the Badwater Basin Road on the Shoshone end of the park. Just picking up some of the detail and triangular shapes in the mountainside. These are the Badlands from Zabriskie Point. Zabriskie is probably one of the most popular locations in the park, along with the Mesquite Sand Dunes. And another area of the park where it's great to just get off the paved walkway and see it for yourself. There's some really good hikes that are on designated trails, as well as you can just basically go in and just wander around. Death Valley is one of the few parks where the Park Service kind of encourages the use of just getting off the trail. I do recommend using a GPS-based app on your phone to basically track your path in and out, particularly if you're going to be shooting into sunset and trying to find your way out into the dark and try to find your car or your truck, whatever you drove in. And I'd use that app during the day, become familiar with it before you need to rely on it. So the last series of slides are all taken in the Mesquite sand dunes. And there again, it just, every day, every hour is different. Another area where you're just free to wander around. I looking for abstracts as well as taking in the big scenes. In Death Valley, I typically tend to shoot with a very long zoom. I have a 100 to 400. I shoot the Fuji platform, so that's an equivalent of a 150 to 600 on a full frame. This January, when I was out there, I had the good fortune of being on a workshop, and we actually went out in a sandstorm. And that was just an incredible experience. The imagery was amazing. And fortunately, I was also pretty well prepared for it. I usually shoot with a naked lens, only use a filter if I need a filter, and I use the UV filter for extra protection. I had goggles on. Our pandemic masks were very handy to keep sand out of my nose and throat. I wish I'd taken the earplugs because sand is everywhere. And if you go out in a sandstorm, I would encourage you to leave the bag or the pack in the car, take one lens. You're not going to want to change lenses out there, and an extra battery or two and some memory cards tucked away in a jacket or a pants pocket where you can easily get to them. The day we were out there, we had up to 50-mile-per-hour gust. I just about lost my camera on my tripod, as well as a few other people. Several people were even knocked down in heavy gust. It was that intense. And all of these images were taken probably within 2 hours of sunset. And the best way to see the dunes is just hike out and just keep walking around and try to find a composition that works for you. To help other photographers that are in the area, it's always good to try to walk just below the top of a ridge line. That way you don't kind of ruin that nice smooth edge as you're viewing from afar. I shot and printed this image in color, but I think it works well in black and white as well. The sky was just dark blue that day. I wish I'd had some great clouds, but that isn't always the case out there. And then my closing shot was literally just a little last glimpse of light along a low dune as I was hiking back out to my car.
Wow. So I think Randy has just done a masterful job of using light and dark to create these fabulous textures and the compositions that he's created. So really excellent, Randy. That's just fun to watch. I have been in sandstorms before, but I've never tried doing photography in a sandstorm. So I'm very impressed, but those came out great. So nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Jean, who's going to tell us about Tuscany. Jean?
Thanks, Steve. In May, Ray and I enjoyed a photo shoot tour of Tuscany that was led by professional photographer Charles Needle. So from the greatest sculpture to rose gardens and fields of poppies, grapevines, olive trees, fortress hill towns, wine and cheese tastings, up before dawn to catch a sunrise, to late night dining. We had some great experiences. Steve wouldn't let me have the whole hour to show you all of my photos. So here are 20 to share some of our experiences with you. Okay, Steve. In Florence, tourists and locals alike go to the Piazza Michelangelo to watch the sunset and enjoy the sparkling lights. The plaza was built in 1869 on a hill just south of the heart of Florence and offers breathtaking views of the entire city. From the Bardini Garden high on another hill overlooking Florence, this is the famous Renaissance dome of the Florence Cathedral, a masterpiece of beauty and engineering, the largest brick dome ever constructed. The cathedral was built in 1296 and the dome in 1420. The famous Ponte Vecchio Bridge on the Arno River, it dates back to 996. Shops have been there since the 13th century. In 1593, Ferdinand I was tired of the stinky waste from butchers and fishmongers and decreed that only goldsmiths and jewelers could have their shops there. This is the 14-foot David. What can you say? It is one of the greatest works of art ever. In 1501, Michelangelo was only 26 when he started carving the marble statue, which depicts the biblical hero David, a lowly shepherd boy, and representing a strength and youthful beauty. Street signs in Florence by famous French sticker artist Colette Abraham. He was quoted, "So this work was born as a result of an encounter between me, my profession, and the absurdity of a city who wants to be seen as the city of Renaissance, but is completely covered by street signs." Poppies, corn poppies. According to myth, Ceres, the Roman goddess of grain, was only able to sleep after drinking a poppy concoction made by Somnus, Roman god of sleep. Once rested, she was able to get up and go to the cornfields so that they would grow well once again. Today, the poppy's presence symbolizes abundant fields and harvest. This is the iconic winding road with cypress trees south of Pienza in the Val d'Orcia. The trees were imported to Tuscany by the Etruscan tribes people many thousands of years ago, who considered the plant to have mystical, supernatural connections. There were many wars between the city-states to conquer territory and power. Hilltop villages were built as fortresses. This is an underground tunnel in Castellina that goes around the village. It's lined with shops, artisans, and restaurants. It encloses the city center from below. This is an example of the thick walls in Pienza. It is a fortress. Pienza is where Renaissance town planning was introduced in 1459 by Pope Pius II. It's basically a square surrounded by buildings, including cathedrals, palaces, shops, homes, restaurants, and now hotels. In another hilltop village, San Gimignano, we were feeling a little nervous about finding our way back to our hotel after a late night dinner. To me, this enormous archway looks like we were about to step into another dimension. We enjoyed an early morning hot air balloon ride with a view of the Tuscan countryside. After the flight, we walked down a long lane to the owner's farmhouse for the traditional champagne toast, plus meats, cheese, fresh fruit, homemade bakery, and some wonderful hospitality. This trimmed up pine tree is on the terrace where we had our first wine tasting at a winery and farmhouse in Chianti. The wine was fabulous. The fresh cheeses, beans, breads, olive oils, and bruschettas served for lunch were absolutely delicious. Another tasty wine and cheese place was under a tree at Segusi, a family-run farm and B&B in southern Tuscany. You can see the hilltop Montepulciano, a medieval village, and then the church in the meadow is Temple San Biagio. In Montepulciano, under one of the Renaissance palaces, are long caves with tall ceilings and arches at the perfect natural temperature for aging and storing wine. The palace was built from 1534 to 1562. This is Temple Baggio that you saw before. It's a masterpiece of 16th century architecture in the middle of a flat meadow outside the walls of Montepulciano. The interior is entirely covered in amber-colored travertine slabs. Outside, bachelorette parties are crazy, no matter what country you're in. Meet Saint Faustus, the patron saint of Castellina. He's resting in gilded glass clawfoot casket inside a church in the village. A crown of flowers encircles his skull, which is turned outward towards visitors and churchgoers, and sports a terrific smile crowded with a full set of teeth. We can only appreciate the miracle of a sunrise if we have waited in the darkness. We waited and we were rewarded with a beautiful view of the foggy farmland amidst the undulating fields in Belvedere in San Quirico d'Orsazza. The group's farewell dinner at a farm in the heart of the Val d'Orcia with a view of the rolling hills and Mount Amiata, a volcanic lava dome. This pristine valley was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2004. This, a sweet ending to a wedding anniversary dinner on a restaurant terrace with a view in the historical center of San Gimignano.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
And Ray also. I mean, wonderful information and wonderful images. I have an idea of where we should go for our next photo walk. So
good idea.
Work out well. Yeah, very nice. Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Bob Davis, and man, I should have put a soundtrack on here. Anybody who likes CCR is okay with me. Bob?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Bob Davis. I first got sort of serious about photography back in 1987 as a co-op student in Virginia. Purchased a Minolta X370 and probably proceeded to take the worst pictures ever taken with that model of camera. And in the intervening years, I've shot stuff on every manner of point and shoot and phone and everything else. But about 4 years ago, I decided it was time to shoot with a little more purpose. And so I've been out and about and trying to do that. A couple of weeks ago, I accompanied my wife on her business trip to Southeastern Virginia, where I co-op all those years ago. And we visited Shenandoah National Park and Luray Caverns along the way and stayed for a couple of nights at the Skyland Resort in the national park. So with that introduction, I'm ready to go, Steve. So Luray Caverns is the largest known cavern system in the eastern United States. And it has formations that date back about 400 million years. And I think that the interplay of shadow and light and the depth of the spaces here are best shown in black and white. And so we'll kind of abandon color for a little while here until we get to some other locations. What appears to be a deeply recessed floor filled with stalagmites here is actually a reflection of the ceiling above on the still surface of Dream Lake, which is the largest body of water in the caverns. It covers about 2,500 square feet. It's only about 18 inches deep. Columns form in the caverns where stalactites going down from the ceiling meet stalagmites going up from the ground. And this particular column is about 40 feet tall. If you're like me and you're not much of a geologist, you can keep them straight by remembering C for ceiling and G for ground in the names. Saracen's Tent is considered to be one of the most well-formed flowstone draperies in the world. In places, the calcite is so translucent that a candle held behind it can reveal the structure of the formation. As you see here, so we popped a little bit of color there to see that. The Great Fallen Stalactite has been in this position for an estimated 7,000 years after it fell during the last major earthquake in the eastern US. It's about 10 feet in diameter, so it's a pretty big piece of calcite. This is the tallest column in the Ray Caverns. It's about 47 feet, and it stands in the room known as Giant's Hall at the lowest elevation in the caverns, about 260 feet below the entrance. And that's my wife, Mary Jo, standing in front to provide some sense of scale, and that's on purpose. She didn't just ruin my shot. One reason I started my journey here in the Ray Caverns is that we were essentially inside a cloud for much of our weekend trip. If you look closely here, you can see 17 little dots. Those are blue jays in flight just above the trees in the foreground. Part of a flock of about 50 to 100, which was interesting to see because we don't get to see them flocking here in Ohio that much. When you have rain and mist, take advantage for some gloomy shots like this. The overlooks and the stone walls along Skyline Drive were originally constructed between 1933 and 1942 by the Civilian Conservation Corps. At its inception, the CCC workers agreed to a 6-month term of service for $30 a month, of which $25 was sent directly home to their parents. So they received $5 a month to keep, plus uniforms, shelter, 3 meals a day, and training. And here's some more of their handiwork. Believe it or not, this was one of the clearer views we had during our weekend. And when they were close enough to emerge from the mist, we also saw white-tailed deer, wild turkeys, and lots of signs warning of black bears, but no actual bears. It finally did clear up a bit, so we took a morning hike on the Dark Hollow Falls Trail, which follows this creek known as Hog Camp Branch, approximately 0.7 miles from an elevation of about 3,400 feet down to about 2,830 feet at the base of Dark Hollow Falls. The maximum slope on that trail of about 10 degrees. This is not Dark Hollow Falls, but the creek was filled with little drops like this, as you might imagine, with an elevation drop of over 560 feet and 0.7 of a mile. This tiny creek is joined by runoff over that distance and a couple of equally tiny side creeks to form one of the park's most iconic waterfalls, which we'll see shortly. Unfortunately, my wife's business trip did not coincide with peak fall color along Skyline Drive, but not all fall color has to be in the canopy. The trail was lined with ferns turning yellow gold, and the twisted trunks of the mountain laurels that we see here were just gorgeous along the path. The misty mountain air and the dense forest provide ideal conditions for lichen to cover just about every tree trunk and boulder as far as the eye can see. So it really makes for some interesting photography opportunities. Given more time, I would have loved to hike to see some more of these trees, especially the ones with maybe a little more interesting shape. But this was a nice scene. All of my trail photos like this one were taken on the way down because I knew I'd be preoccupied with other tasks like trying to breathe on my way back up. We were also alone on the trail on the descent after we got an early start. So even more and more people were coming down the trail by the time we hiked back up. So the steepest section of the trail leads from the crest of Dark Hollow Falls to the base of this 70-foot tall upper section. 2+ days of rain meant we got to see this waterfall with really nice flow. And then below the main waterfall, there's an additional drop of about 10 feet and then a slope down to 2 narrow slides about 20 feet tall each, which are not particularly picturesque. But that spot was about 85 feet below the crest of the upper section. We never quite got clear enough skies to get the iconic shot of the stacked up blue peaks that give the Blue Ridge Mountains their name. But after a couple of days of rain, a sunny mountain meadow with a backdrop of taller peaks like this was a welcome sight. Our trip continued farther east then and back down to sea level near the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay in Hampton and Newport News. This shot is from Newport News Park with sunset approaching. Back to my old stomping grounds from my college days, at least while I was away on co-op. Back to black and white for this shot to better show the texture in the boardwalk across the lake, which was created by damming Beaver Dam Creek, or maybe by more completely damming Beaver Dam Creek, if that name is accurate. And then we'll finish with a sunset and just a little more mist, and that was followed by a trip back home, and ultimately this presentation, which I sincerely hope you have enjoyed, and I thank you for spending some time with me.
Thank you very much, Bob. I have to say, I'm really amazed at what Bob was able to capture on being an accompaniment for a spouse's business trip. I should be so lucky to get so many great photos of diverse subjects in such a relatively short period of time. So very nicely done. And I do know also that inside of caverns, when you have spotlighted stalagmites and stalactites, it is tough to get that lighting right. So well done. Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have Dennis Hensley with sunrises and sunsets. Dennis?
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so I'm Dennis Hensley. I started taking pictures about 5 years ago with sports and landscapes, and this is some of my better shots of sunrises and sunsets. All right, this first picture is of my friend's farm. It's a sunrise, kind of cropped in. It was not much going on that day except for this general area where the fog and the sun was rising over the peak. And this is a similar vantage point from that same farm. You can see that tall tree right next to the sun is where I kind of zoomed in there in the previous picture. This next shot here is of Veterans Park in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from originally. This was the day after Christmas last year, and my parents thought I was crazy for getting up so early to go downtown and take some pictures. So this is another vantage point of my friend's farm in Kent. The interesting thing about this is they bale the hay like 2 or 3 times a year, and the day before my friends asked me or told me about it, so I ran out here with Steve actually, and this shot here was about 5 minutes before this orange shot that you see here. So the sky changed colors significantly in about 5 or 10 minutes time and gave 2 unique, completely different pictures. This next shot here is from Springfield Bog Metro Park. We got up early that day and was hoping for a nice sunrise. This is Barlow Farm. It's one of the iconic Hudson barns. This is right after a storm blew through, and there'll be a series of pictures I have of here of this particular storm. The cloud formations were really intriguing, and it was bright orange. And then, and again, about 10 minutes afterwards, we were packing up and I saw a puddle right in front of my car where I parked. And I tried to incorporate like a mirror shot using a puddle. This puddle is probably only 17 inches wide, maybe 2 feet long, but it gave a unique perspective. And then the next several shots I have here are reflection shots, kind of mimicking what I showed before. If you look up in the tree in the upper right, there's a blue heron there. That's in Hudson Spring Park last fall. And another perfectly still shot of Hudson Spring Park from a different vantage point on another day. I particularly like this one a lot because of the cloud formations and how the purple kind of showed up in the sky. This is the solar eclipse last June. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning to head out to Lakewood Park to try to capture some of the solar eclipse. This is in Headlands Beach. The funny thing about this one, I was trying to capture the sun setting, and I looked off to the right and I saw that the cloud formations made a nice cotton candy sky next to the lighthouse there. And again, another picture of Barlow Farms, but again, not looking towards the sun. I was looking away from the sun and saw the purple sky and ran about 100 yards to get the purple sky versus the sun setting. The next several pictures are from wintertime. I think winter has the prettiest sunrises and sunsets. This one is at Trail Lake Park in right off of Ravenna Road near my house. This is the Cuyahoga River down in the valley. Again, this picture and the following picture are 10 minutes apart, but the sky was completely different. This had a nice pink and purple hue to it. And the steam coming off the river is pretty interesting. It was 5 degrees that morning. And this is 10 minutes later when the sun was peeking out through the tree line there. I was able to still capture all the ice that was forming on the vegetation in that area. So the next 2 shots are of that same storm as it was passing through the area. This is Trail Lake Park. We were taking some pictures of trying to capture some lightning, and this was at the top of the hill before you went towards the left around that little peninsula of water there. And this is my shot of the year. I happen to see, if you look on the left-hand side of that picture, there's a blue heron that flew up into the roost and was watching the light show with us. And I aimed my camera over there, hoping to get a lightning strike, and was able to capture both in one image. And then this one was actually an accident in my book. It's Springfield Bog again for the sunrise, and I couldn't figure out a good composition because those flowers were so high. So I pulled out my 70-200 and tried to zoom in and capture the sun rising and the flowers at the same time. And I enjoyed that one. And this last one was, again, a little bit of a mistake. I still had my camera in crop mode. And this was I thought was going to be a 16 millimeter wide shot, and it was 1.6 close. It was zoomed in more so than I expected, but I still enjoyed the shot.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Appreciate that. Dennis is a terrific portrait photographer, but I also think he's one of the best people at capturing sunrises and sunsets, and so glad he made this presentation. Like a lot of great photographers where people are called lucky, we really know it's when preparation meets opportunity, and often it's the alarm clock, which is the photographer's best friend. Getting out there in time to capture those colors early morning, I think, can be extremely valuable, as we've seen. Next up, we have Lori Roach, and she's going to talk, I think, about simplicity, and the title is Simple Enough. So, Lori?
Yes, hi, everybody. I took my first pictures back in high school with a Kodak Instamatic camera, if some of you remember those. And I took pictures for 6 or 7 years and then stopped for 30 years and picked it up back again in 2012. Tonight, I'm going to share with you the methods I use to create simple images with clear subjects. And while I was preparing for tonight, I was struck by the similarities between creating a simple photograph and this Petchakucha. For both, I need to identify my subject and eliminate anything that doesn't bring focus to the story I'm trying to tell. So 20 images in 20 seconds sounded simple enough, but like photography, it was incredibly challenging. And you can go ahead and start now, Steve. To bring attention to my subject when I'm shooting, I try to minimize any distractions. If too much is going on around my subject, I'll switch up my approach to try a new vantage point. Like here, I got on the ground to look upwards, and this praying mantis peeked over at me, surprising us both. I was surprised again when I got underneath these flowers and discovered that the petals were translucent, giving this image a lovely glow. Most advice says to avoid a plain white background, but here I think it ended up really adding to the atmosphere and the simplicity of the image. This image that I took in Iceland actually uses the emptiness and simplicity as its subject. The distant mountains and the birds do give it scale and interest, but it's the vast emptiness that I wanted to communicate to the viewer. If I have enough distance between my subject and the background, I'm able to totally isolate the subject with a shallow depth of field. This background may be plain, but the color green tells the viewer that this spider web exists in the natural environment rather than one made by man. And not all backgrounds have to fade into the background, as they say, but can be included in your frame to enhance your subject. This red leaf is obviously the main subject here, but the ice is an essential part of the image. It's helping to tell the story by providing a valuable piece of information while still simplifying the scene. For this image, I took advantage of sunrise to color the water and used a silhouette to isolate the herons and give atmosphere to the scene while I was shooting. Later, in processing, I also did some cropping and some burning. Now, so far, I've shown examples where I use the backgrounds to simplify the images, but sometimes I use the foreground. This image from Iceland is simple, but yet mysterious and dynamic. This simple approach can work for all kinds of photography, including creepy stalker portraits. I'll often use weather as a scene simplifier to help accentuate my subjects. I'm sure you're all familiar with fog, the photographer's friend, but I also use rain and snow. I've even used dust storms a couple of times. It can be very hard on equipment and fingers and toes and noses, but very good for images. I saw this scene one summer, and while there wasn't a shot then, I felt it had potential. So I watched this location for 2 years until finally the snowfall simplified the scene and gave me the missing element to make it work. But there will be those times when nothing can be done to eliminate the chaos around your subject. That's when I get in super tight with no background at all. Flowers make ideal subjects for getting up close and personal. Their colors and details provide enough interest to your frame so that including much more isn't necessary. Now, earlier, I pointed out how a background added context to images, but here it was the opposite. The background at Back to the Wild Bird Rehab Center looked very unnatural for this snowy owl, so I got in really close to eliminate it, and hopefully I tricked the viewer into thinking I can shoot wildlife, which I don't. Even though an image is simple, it can still give the viewer a lot of information. Here you can tell this leaf was shot during fall. It had rained recently, and if you look closely, you will see that it is floating in water. Information in your frame comes from your subject, the background, your foreground, or all of the above. For this caterpillar, I chose to represent the subject and background in a bit differently. I used my macro lens for a very shallow depth of field to accentuate the shapes in the image. Then in processing, I cropped it, did some burning in, and laid a texture on top. You clearly see the caterpillar, yet it has an abstract quality that I love. Now, I personally don't consider this one an abstract, but the fact that people always ask me what the heck it is, I guess I should. I shot this image 31 years ago using a shallow depth of field and was very aware that my background was far away. This is ice on barbed wire. I find abstracts do work very well for creating simple images. This is moss in bloom in my backyard. And here I partially submerged my camera underwater in the ocean. And this is the reflection of sunrise in Lake Ladue. The last technique I use in the field is a slow shutter speed. You're no doubt familiar with this method for waterfalls. Here I was at Boneyard Beach in Florida, and this image goes beyond being merely simple all the way into minimalism because it has only one element of interest and a completely blank background. For simple images, I usually include no more than 3 elements. This image has big impact, but when you look closely, it has only 3 pieces of information. And while this light trail can look like a river, it's actually traffic during a morning commute in Sedona. Sometimes though, I'll just not have any good options in the field. It'll be too busy or too plain. And that's when I'll rely on processing. I crop, I dodge and burn, I'll remove things, or add textures to replace or at least disguise the parts I don't want the viewer to focus on. For these next images, I've overlaid textures to add interest to the backgrounds and lend an artistic flair to the images overall. Simplification can work for all kinds of subjects and can be achieved in the field and/or with processing. If you can eliminate the distracting elements in your frame, you will bring more attention to your subjects. I know it does sound simple enough, and hopefully with these techniques, it will be. And one more frame and I'm out. I do want to say thank you to Bob Davis for inviting me to participate tonight. So he's the one to either thank or blame, depending on how you feel about this presentation of mine. Good night.
Thank you so much, Lori. Those are just fabulous compositions. And in my opinion, the reason they're so fabulous are for 2 things. Number one, she's eliminated distractions and she knows how to work with balance. Uses negative space really, really well. And they're just gorgeous. I can learn a lot from Lori.
Well, thank you.
So at this point, want to just give an opportunity for folks who have comments or questions as a review. These are the 8 presenters and topics that we had this evening. I appreciate those comments that have been made in the chats. Does anybody have anything they want to ask or say to any individual? Please be sure to unmute yourself if you do. Okay, well, won't belabor it, but I think we've had an excellent showing, again, showing the range of talent that we have within our photo society. It's great fun seeing each other's work, sharing what you've learned, what you've done, how you see things. And I think it's just terrific opportunity to learn from one another. So appreciate everybody's participation. I think I actually put that on the slides to end this. We do want to thank all those that presented and prepared. It takes actually a lot, as some people mentioned, to select 20 on a specific theme and prepare your remarks and things that you want to say about them. We appreciate all those members who have participated and the guests who join us. We thank you and we hope you have a lovely evening. Hope to see you 1 week from today. Jim Retzel, a professional bird photographer, has invited us to come see his printed artwork at the Cyberling Gallery. You should see information about that, Facebook and in the newsletter that's going to go out. That's next Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Come there physically. I think it's going to be a great talk and look forward to seeing some of you there. So have a lovely evening, everyone. Good night.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.